So hi everyone and welcome to this general discussion session. And in this session, we shall be discussing the solutions using two approaches for this challenge which was proposed by Win Hopkins, one using Power Query and another using Excel formulas. So you may find this challenge details and his other blogs on accessanalytic.com.au. So do check out this website. And if you wish to send your submission, so you may definitely send uh, to this email and in this format, and don't just send the M code, send along with the file with the solutions, right? If you wish to find the files and the other submissions, then this is the link where you can find other submissions and the file, this file that we are working in. And this is his YouTube channel. So I got to know about this challenge from his YouTube community post. So do check out his YouTube videos as well. They are amazing, right? So let's proceed and let's have a look at the challenge first, and then we will deep dive into the solutions using Power Query and formulas. So this was the challenge. So the challenge is that let's say we are given with this input table, and in this input table we have different columns here. Let's say we have ID, we have type, unit cost, and selling price. Now the challenge is that let's say for ID 123, we have three types AA, BB, CC, and corresponding to each of the types, we have these unit cost and selling price. So unit cost for AA here is 10.85. For BB here is $11.93, and for CC it is $12.31. And how do we know that these AA, BB, and CC are different types? How do we know that? Can anyone tell here? How do we know this? Yes, because of that space, right? This space is acting as a delimiter, so we know that these are different types. These are unit cost because they are separated by a space. And similarly, 15.95 is selling price for AA, 17.25 for BB, and 19.5 for CC. So these are the selling prices for each of these types. Similarly, for 456 ID as well and for 467 as well, we have type, unit cost, and selling price. Now, two things that we have to keep in mind is that first, in future, more columns can be added. So we have to keep our solution dynamic. Secondly, more rows can be added here. So we have to keep that dynamic row wise as well. And third, that let's say in future, more types or more unit cost or uh, more values are added here. So we have to keep that in mind as well. Our solution should be dynamic. Now let's talk about what is the actual output that we have to generate. So this is the kind of output that we have to generate. For each of the IDs, we have to create this kind of structure that for each of the types, but we have the corresponding unit cost and selling price into different rows and columns. So this is the kind of output that we have to generate. We have to basically split this table into multiple rows and columns. So the columns are again same, but we have to split it into multiple rows here like this. And we have to keep it dynamic as well. So that will be our challenge here. And again, one more challenge will be that let's say here we have four different types, but corresponding to these four types, we only have three unit cost and three selling prices. So we have to keep those extra values, right? Extra column values as nulls, as empty. So we don't have to display anything here. And we got the type here. This is extra type here. So we have to keep all these things in mind, and we have to generate this kind of result. So let's proceed and let's see that how we can do so. First using Power Query and then using formulas. So this is the table here, and we will load the result of Power Query in this cell. So let's first load this table to query editor. So for that, we will select this table and we will go to data tab, and then we will go to from table slash range. From table slash range. So we have this here. Now, this is the table loaded here, and we can remove this change type step, and we can rename this as, let's say, Power Query solution. Right. Now, what is the kind of transformation that we have to do? First of all, tell me that we have to do the transformation row wise or column wise. Let's say this for this particular row or for each of the columns. What we have to do the transformation, row wise or column wise? No, we have to do the transformation row wise. For this particular row, right? For let's say for ID 123, these have to be split into multiple rows. Then let's say for ID number 456, we have to split each of the column values into multiple rows. So we have to move row by row. That for this particular row, we will generate one output. Then for this particular row, we will generate another output. And then for this particular row, we will generate another output. And then we will club them all together, one under the other. So this is what we have to do. And for that, again, let's say we are moving row by row. And for that, we have to split these results into multiple rows, split this into multiple rows, split this into multiple rows. This is what we have to do. So first of all, we will create a list of all the delimiters, all the possible delimiters that we are going to have here. And for now, we are just assuming that space will be there. But let's say in future, more delimiters are added here in this data. So our solution should be dynamic. So let's do one thing. Let's create another step named as delimiters. So let's rename this as delimiters. Okay. And here we will give a list of all the possible delimiters that can be there in the data. So the first delimiter that we will have is a space. And let's say we take another delimiter as a forward slash. So let's take these two delimiters for now. And now let's start working on our source step. So we have this loaded here. And now we have to do the transformation row wise. So what we can do here is that let's convert this complete table into three lists, right? So what we can do here is we can use table.toRows function, and what it will do is that it will transform this table, this source table, into a list of lists where each of the list contains all the values that we had in that particular row. Right, let's say this first list, here we have all the values that we had in the first row, 1 2 3 A B B C C, right? Then under unit cost and then under sell price. So we have them here. So until here all the steps are clear, what we have done until now, that we have converted this into rows, right? And then what we have to do, we have to apply transformation on each of the lists, right? This is the parent list, this complete list is the parent list, and inside this we have the child list. So this is one child list, this is second child, and this is third child. And for each of the child list, we have to apply transformation. That we have to convert this particular list into a table. Into what kind of table? So let's see that as well. So let me do this close and load to only create connection. What we have to do basically, that for each of the lists, we have to create this kind of table. Let's say for the first list, we will create this kind of table. For the second list, we will create this kind of table. Correct. This is what we have to do. That for each of the list, we will convert them into a table. So let's again go back to our Power Query editor. So how we can do this? For that as well, we will have to do is we will have to split each of the items in this list into another list, and that list will contain all these items into different rows, right? So let's say if we split, let's say this AABBCC into different rows, so we will get a list of 3 items. For this, we will again get a list of 3 items. For this, again, we will get a list of 3 items. Like that, we have to do. So first of all, we will have to transform this parent list. And inside this parent list, we have to transform each of the child list. So let's first apply the transformation on this parent list. So for that, what we can do is we can use list.transform function. So list.transform function. And this is the parent list, right? This is the parent list on which we are applying our transformation function. And under this, what we have to do, that for each of the list, we have to apply some transformation. Let's say what we say is that for each of the list under this parent list, what we have to do basically, we wish to get back that list as it is in return. So we will use this underscore here, and we are getting the same output. We have not done any kind of transformation here. But let's say what we do here is that, let's say we wish to extract the first item from each of these child list. So we can use here curly braces, and from that we have to extract the first item from each of the child list. So we are getting this as a result. For each of the child list, what was the first value that we had? These IDs. So we are getting that here, 1 2 3 4 5 6 and 4 6 7. Let's say we wish to extract the first item for each of the child list. So we are getting this as our output, right? This is the transformation that we are doing on each of the child list. But what is the transformation that we had to do on each of the child list? We had to split each of the values in that child list into another list, right? So for that we will have to use here, list dot transform function again, because we have to again transform that child list as well. So we will have to use list dot transformation again, this step again. Is it clear why we are again using list dot transform function? Because we are again transforming this list, right? We are again transforming this list, so we have to use list dot transform function again. So let's use list dot transform function again. And as our list, what will be the input here? What is the list that we are transforming? Again, each of the child list, and this underscore denotes each of the child list. So we will use underscore here, that we are transforming each of the child list, and this underscore denotes each of the child list under this parent list. And what is the function that we are performing? We have to split each of the values in that child list, right? So for that, what we can do is we can use x as our variable to call out each of the values in that child list. So we are using x here to call out each of the values in that child list. And what we have to do basically, that for each of the values, we have to split them. So we will use a splitter dot split text by any delimiter function here. And inside this, what is the list of delimiters? We created that right in the previous step. So we can use it here, delimiters. And what is the function that we have to perform? On what we have to perform the splitter function? On which value? What should be written here? X. On x, we are performing this split function. So let me show you. Let me do this first. Let me close this and let me show you here. So what we are doing basically, that first of all, we transformed this as a list of lists. So we got parent list and then we got each of the child list as well. Then what we are doing, we are transforming each of the child list as well, because they are again a list. So we are using list dot transform function again. And we are calling each of the values inside that child list by x. And on x, what we are doing, we are performing a split function. This splitter dot split by any delimiter is doing that part. And inside that, it was asking us for list of delimiters. So we already gave them here. And on what we were performing that split function, this x, right? So we gave x here because x denotes each of the values in that child list. Correct. So we got again a list of list because we have performed transformation for each of the list. And this is the output that we are getting. And why we are getting error for, let's say, the first item? Any ideas here? Why we are getting errors for this first item in each of the list? No, that is not the reason. That is not the reason. The reason is that the first item was IDs, right, for each of the list. And these IDs are treated as numbers. And this splitter dot split by any delimiter function only accepts text as values. So that's why we are getting errors here. So first of all, we have to transform each of the values here in let's say in this row or each of the rows. We have to transform them as text. So what we can do here is that we can say that transform these as text. So we can use text dot from function. Text dot from function. So what this text dot from function will do, it will transform each of the values that we have in each of the child list into text. And then on that, we are performing this split function. So we got this as a result. We first of all got a parent list, and inside that we got each of the child list. And we are performing our function on them. And let's see this, that what is the output of this particular item. So we got this as a list of list. And again, what we got is, let's say this list contains 1, 2, 3. The second list contains A, B, B, C, C split into multiple rows. Again, this is split into multiple rows. Again, this is split into multiple rows. So we got this as our output. And from this list of list, what we have to do, we have to create a table. As we saw earlier, we have to create a table, right? So for creating table from this list of list, and again, let's say this is one list, this is another list, this is third list, this is fourth list. For each of the each of the lists denote each of the rows or each of the columns. Let's say we have 1, 2, 3 here. This was first column, right? ID column, correct? Then let's say we have here A, B, B, C, C. This was another column or another row. This denotes another column, second column or second row. What is it? Another column. Excellent. This is second column, this is third column, this is fourth column. So from this list of list, we have to create a table. And for that, what we can do is we can use table from columns function. Table from columns function. And again, this asks for lists as list. And this is again a list, list in a list. So we can use it here. And let's close the bracket here. And we got this as our output. Likewise, we have to do for each of these lists here, right? We have to do it for each of the list here. We got this as our output. And again, we don't want nulls here. What we want here is this 1, 2, 3 again filled down. We want 1, 2, 3 here again. We want 1, 2, 3 here again. So which function can we use here? Which function can we use here? Again, we have to basically fill down. We have to fill down for these null values. So which function can we use here? We can use fill down function. Fill down function. Table dot fill down function. And on which table we have to perform this step? This is the table on which we have to perform this step, right? And on which column? Which column do we have to fill down? Which column do we have to fill down? So also let's do one thing, right? Also, yes, column 1 is correct, but also let's do one thing. In this table dot from columns, in this table dot from columns function, there is also an extra parameter that we can use. So right now we have the names here as column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, but we can also rename them as these ID type, unit cost, selling price. They will remain the same. So what we can do here is we will pick the column names from the source step. So here it is asking from columns as any, that is we can use columns as our list. So let's use table dot column names step here. Table column names step here. Function here. Table dot columns name functions here. And it is asking for table. So which table should we give here? From which table we have to extract the column names? From which table do we have to extract the column names so that we can use them here? Yes, excellent, excellent. We have to extract them from source step. Correct. So we got this as a result here. We have renamed the columns and we didn't use that rename column step. We just directly did it inside table.from columns function only. Correct. So we have renamed them, and inside this table, which column do we have to fill down now? ID column. So we can use that as a reference here. So let's use that. So function table.fillDown function, table.fillDown function. And again, which columns do we have to fill down? ID, right? So we will use that inside list ID, and let's close the bracket. So this is the result that we got, right? ID is now filled down, type, unit cost, selling price. This we tested for, let's say, this first list. Let's test this for second list as well. So for this, we will use 1 here. So for 1, we got this as our output. Let's test this for third list as well. That is for this third row, right? This third row. Let's test this for third row as well. So we are transforming now the third row to this kind of output. Not 3, we will have to use here 2. So for the third row, we are getting this kind of output, and these are automatically taken care of. These null values, those extra values for IR, they are already taken care of. So we don't have to worry about anything here, right? And now we are doing it for each of the rows. We have to do this step for each of the rows. So what we can do here, we can come here, and this particular this particular part denotes each of the list here, right? The transformation that we did on each of the child list. Now on this, we have to perform all those steps that we did on in custom 2 step. So let's do it here. First of all, we converted this list of list into table. So table from columns. So let's use that step here, and let's close the brackets here, right? So we converted each of the list of list into tables, and then we extracted those column names as well. So let's copy that from here. Let's copy this from here. And let's come here and let's find that step, and let's paste this here. So we got this as a result, right? Again, tables, we rename tables as well, rename the columns. Now, what we have to do, we have to fill down as a last step, right? Fill down the ID column. So let's do that here as well. Table fill down, And columns, in columns, what we will give? ID, right, in the list. ID in list. Okay, let's close the brackets. Let's press enter. And we got this as our output. We have converted each of the row values into a list of tables. So we have this list of tables, this table, this table, and this table. Now what we have to do, we have to combine all these tables together. So for that, what we can do is we can use table.combine function. Table combine function. And what it does is that it expects, let's see here, it expects tables as list. So just tell me, is it fulfilling the criteria? Is this a list of all the tables? Is this a list of tables? Yes. And what it is asking for? It is asking for tables as list. So this is yes, this is a list of tables. So let's close the bracket. Let's press enter, and we got this as our output. And we don't need this. We just did this for testing purpose. So we just solved this particular problem in 3 steps. This was the source step. These were the delimiters that we used, and this is the final result that we got here. Right. Ideally, it could have been solved in just only one step. We added this just for our convenience, this delimiters step, but we got this as a result. Let's rename this to result. And we got this as a result. And now we can change types as well. So let's change the type here to currency. This as well to currency. And we are done. Right. Let's load this result. Close and load. So right now it is connection only. Let's load this to this reference, load to table existing worksheet. Okay. And we have loaded the result here. And this is what we got here. Right. And let's see this. This is exactly the same, right? The output is exactly the same. Correct. So this is how we can split this kind of data into multiple rows. And now let's test this. Let's say we add another type here as AB, right? As AB. And let's refresh this. So as you can see, this AB is added here for ID number 456. And similarly, let's say we use forward slash as our delimiter. So let's use that. Let's use this here. Yes, forward slash. And let's say we use 45 here. And let's refresh this now. So as you can see, 45 is added here. Let's use one more item here. So let's say another unit price is added here. Let's say forward slash and then 76. Let's refresh this and let's see the result. So 76 is added here for 467, but we didn't had that extra type here and selling price here, so we have no result here. Let's do one thing more, that let's add one more column here. Let's say numbers, right? And let's add 1 here, 2 here, and 3 here. So let's see the result here. If we refresh this, we got 1 here. Why 1 here? Only because this corresponds to only type AA. This only corresponds to type EF for ID 456. This only corresponds to type GY for ID 467. Right. And let's also test this row wise as well. Let's expand the rows. So what we will do, we will add another ID here. Let's say 547 or 548, right? And let's add another type here. Let's say Excel forward slash VBA. And let's add unit cost 100 space 200. And let's add selling price as 300 only. We are skipping VBA, and numbers as let's say 4 and 4 space 8, right? Let's add this here and let's try to refresh this. Let's refresh this. So we got this as a result for 548 Excel VBA 100 200, only 300 for Excel, and 400 are here. So was the explanation and was the output clear? What we did in each of the steps? Yes. So first of all, this was our source. This was the list of delimiters. We can add more delimiters to this to keep our result dynamic. This was the result. This was the result that we generated. And first of all, we transformed our table into a list of lists, so that for each of the rows we have that into a list, and then for that list we split each of the values into multiple rows, and then we created a table out of that. So that those were the steps that we used. So this is the solution using Power Query.